Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Neeru Tandon from Department of English, VSSD College, Kanpur. In this paper of English language teaching, we are discussing the various problems and areas of second language teachings, English as a second language. In this module on research and theories of second language acquisition, written by Dr. Kavita Tiwari, we are going to find various researches done in this particular field. Now, SLA, that is the popular name for second language acquisition. What is the need of research or any theory? We want to learn another language. Let us learn that. A language is there to communicate. Let us communicate. But theories and researches, they are important for the development of that particular portion, that particular language, the acquisition of that language by many more. We need researches because various new ways can be found, or whatever ways are prevalent, what are the good and the bad points of those particular methods or theories. By discussing various theories, we find various procedures, and then in classroom we discuss various techniques to implement those theoretical outcomes. So in this module, we are going to talk about various researches and various theories of second language acquisition. SLA is a discipline that is a diversified subject. Since 1960s, SLA research attempts to understand the process that occur as individuals learn a second language, L2. Specifically, researchers work upon three categories: documenting phenomena, which happens during the acquisition of a second language, explaining these languages acquisition, and finally, to understand the factors which improve L2 acquisition. There are few bases for second language acquisition: environmental factors, age, acquisition rate and proficiency, cognitive variables, learning as well as acquisition, exposure and input, interlanguage connectivity, and cognitive processes involved in acquisition. Now in this diagram, you can see that second language acquisition theory and applied linguistic research and ideas and intuition, they have a relationship, and together they have language teaching practice. Now, what are the observations regarding SLA? The target language is very important. Focus should be there on the meaning of utterances that makes learners quick to learn. Learners produce more output as language than they take as input. A learner's speech output is in a predictable order. Learners can develop at variable rates while learning under the same conditions. A learner's first language, or the native language we may call, plays very powerful role in learning process and may have a major impact on the acquisition of the second language. Instructional effects are limited on the learning capacity of the student. A particular aspect of language which is taught and practiced may not match the student's intellect. Important observations regarding the research on second language acquisition: we should not forget that a learner's first language plays very important role in learning process. Many researchers, they have just concentrated on this very point, how and how far the mother tongue is just influencing the second language learner's learning capability. It may have a major impact on the acquisition of the second language. Instructional effects are limited on the learning capacity of the student. A particular aspect of language which is taught and practiced may not match the student's intellect. Now there are certain research proposals. Observations propose that researchers move to the second basic task of SLA research, which is to explain how to acquire language. The answer lies in the fact that researchers have examined the relation between the internal cognitive processes and the external socio-cultural factors. Information processing. Learning is achieved through paying attention to any aspect of language gradually. By practice, it can be excelled. Second language acquisition is gaining the knowledge of that foreign language that can be eventually called on automatically for speaking and understanding. Then information is best retrieved in situations that are similar to those in which they were acquired. Third point, that second language acquisition is seen as a skill learning, which starts with declarative knowledge and converts into procedural knowledge. And finally, there exists a strong connection between linguistic features and the specific linguistics and in the situational context in which they occur. Now, various theories are there. That semantic theory, socio-cultural theory, behaviorist theory, LAD, or the universal grammar model. All these theories are important in different functions, but as far as research is concerned, we cannot avoid discussing these theories for the research purpose. That whatever researches have been done on second language acquisition, these theories had a great role to play in particular. Semantic theory holds a lot of importance in second language acquisition as meaning is the soul of a language. Several meanings can be concluded as semantic, lexical, grammatical, and pragmatic meanings. Socio-cultural theory was conceived by Rich in 1985. This theory is the notion that the human brain and its function are always integrated to social and cultural boundaries. Social internationalists focused that language learners use their linguistic environment to construct their knowledge of second language. Vygotsky explained the role of social environment on a child in detail. Whosoever is doing research on second language acquisition must go through his findings. Then socio-cultural theory. Unlike other approaches, it emphasizes the role of feedback and reinforcement in language acquisition. Specifically, it asserts that much of a child's linguistic growth stems from modeling of an interaction with parents and other adults who very frequently provide instructive correction. Now, what happens whenever a child is there in the stage of acquiring the second language? Whosoever is there close to him may make certain corrections in his process of acquiring that particular language. And the number one comes the role of parents. After that, teachers, because parents are there for most of the time with the child, and then teachers are there because it is their job to help them learning that particular language. After that comes peer group, and finally some instructor who comes off and on to help the child in his studies. Socio-cultural theory is somewhat similar to behaviorist accounts of language also, though it differs substantially in that it posits the existence of a social cognitive model and other mental structures within children, that is a sharp contrast to the black box approach of classical behaviorism. Now let us come to the behaviorist theory. We know that this theory was given by B.F. Skinner and it widely affected almost all scientific areas. This theory illustrated that human behavior can be learned through various stimulus and various responses. This process applies the way people learn language and human behavior. Chomsky said that this innate ability to use language as language acquisition device, popularly known as LAD. Universal grammar theory. This approach claims that humans inherit a mental language faculty which highly constrains the shape that human languages can take. Children require their first language easily and speedily to help the second language acquisition. The first language may be complex, it may be abstract, but it is acquired easily in comparison with the second language. We need to understand the language system as well as the procedure to efficiently use this system. The comments upon universal grammar by critics. Lydia White said, essential for second language acquisition, but nature of universal grammar is altered. Robert Blave-Roman and Jacqueline said, not a fine explanation for second language acquisition. While Vivian Cook said, learners already have more knowledge than input gives them. Nature and availability of universal grammar are the same in first language acquisition and second language acquisition. The process is different. The mindset is different. The capability to retain is different. And the exposure is different. Universal grammar that is present to second language learners has been altered in its nature by acquisition of other languages. There comes the role of input hypothesis. In his input hypothesis, Connectionism argued that language acquisition depends upon learners' current level of L2 competence. According to this input, our mind's small part filters out L2 input and makes the input process of L2 a bit difficult. Input is an essential factor in Connectionism's model. Further research was conducted in linguistic area. Now in this input hypothesis, you can see in this particular model that affecting filters are there. First, there is comprehensible input, and after filtering, it is just moving towards language acquisition device, LAD, and then in the learned knowledge, after monitoring, there is acquired knowledge, and then it comes to output. Interaction hypothesis. While Stock has framed the acquisition of language as an interaction between analysis and control. To understand the rules of target language is analysis and acquisition of these rules for the production of the language in control. Now, output hypothesis. This theory proposes the concept that for any language learning, meaningful output is equally important as meaningful input. However, no research very strongly recommends this hypothesis. Now, noticing hypothesis is also important. Learners must notice the route in which their interlanguage structures differ from target norms. This noticing of the gap enables the learner's internal language processing to reconstruct the learner's representation of the rules of the L2. So, as we are discussing the theories of second language acquisition, there are many important things as the research has pointed out. The most important thing to be taken care of is the vocabulary. How to get hold of the vocabulary, how to teach vocabulary, and how students should acquire vocabulary to acquire this second language. That is very important, and in this regard, let me discuss a very important point, a very important research of the field done by Bancroft. His 5 principles of effective second language vocabulary instructions are must to understand. The first rule says, present new words frequently and repeatedly in input. The more recurrently language learners are open to the elements to overseas terminology, the more probable they are to memorize it. Studies put forward that most learners need between 5 to 16 meetings with a word in order to retain it. Like if a student learns a word once only, then it's very difficult for him to keep it in his memory for further usage. 2 times, 3 times, at least 5 to 16 times when he listens, then that word becomes his own. So that is why the ancient thing of Indian education that make sentences. It means use them often. Try to speak those words while communicating, then only that word will remain in your vocabulary, that will be yours. Baiki attempts an exceptional job providing this repeated exposure. Every statement and expression must be appropriately recognized numerous times to acquire the premier score, while the diversity of drills and tricks prevent this reiteration from being mind-numbing. Language learners are accustomed to exploit and take pleasure in the curriculum long adequate to bring about an adequate number of meetings to command the new glossary. The normal thing is that whatever words we feel that students must know as teachers, keep on repeating those words or giving exercise to students so that they should come up with those words. We can give them those words and tell them to write a story related with those words, or using those words they can just write down a paragraph. So this way they will use those words more and more, and it will be easy for them to acquire. The second principle says limit forced output during the initial stages of learning new words. To force the language learners to sprint into sentence configuration can impede with terminology learning for the duration of the commencement stages of acquiring of innovative language. As an unconventional way, learners must be given time to take up the meanings of individual words at their individual swiftness before the words are required to be used in a bigger perspective. Language learners who acquire that time are outlying more likely to employ the words appropriately when they have to form sentences. Baiki gives speech learners all the time they need to focal point on strange language stipulations. Third point, use meaning-bearing comprehensible input when presenting new words. One thing is that again and again repeat those words, but when you present the word altogether, the new word they have never heard, then what to do? To productively make the association between a distant language word and its denotation for the learners, meaning must be conveyed in a lucid manner. One technique for the assembly of foreign terms comprehensible and thus promoting expressions knowledge is to present every sound in a multiplicity of ways. Baiki therefore uses a versatile quantity of techniques to make strange language vocabulary unforgettable for language learners. For example, every far-off language expression is presented not only as transcript but also as auditory, so that lingo learners can hear the accurate articulation as long as they need to fix it in their psyche. Next one, that progress from less demanding to more demanding vocabulary related activities. What is less demanding? What is more demanding? That in whatever area, in whatever context, the child, the learner is there, so that is more demanding. The area where he is not usually needing to communicate, that may be less demanding. Like a child is learning a language, he has got nothing to do with the medical field, so the words, the terminology related with the medical field are less demanding for him. Researchers prove that language learning is most efficient when learners begin off with a diminutive set of expressions, then progressively append supplementary terms as the initial ones are mastered. Baiki takes care of this route robotically by observance of the track of the expressions that a learner must be working upon and introducing new glossary at the most apposite times. The movements in Baiki also steps forward from easier to more exhaustion, allowing learners to gradually fabricate their self-reliance and their capability to construct the foreign tongue. The last, that limit forced semantic elaboration during the initial stages of learning new words. This program proposes that we should not force the beginning language learners to instantly produce complete sentences. First, they should understand the word, its usage, and then only they should come forward to form the complete and proper grammatically correct sentences. A language curriculum should also evade other types of amplification that might produce negative effects on the learning of new words. Some learners find it disturbing or perplexing when they are expected to execute additional responsibilities at the similar time when they are trying to know new words. Studies show that learners who are supposed to catalog their relations for distant language stipulations, or if they have to count the letters in each foreign term they were learning, had inferior evoke for those lexis words than the learners who resolute just on the words themselves. Baiki focuses on creating precise one-to-one relations between the unfamiliar language expressions and their native tongue meanings. Now, there is the controlled processing and automatic processing regarded with the second language acquisition. When you just expose the child in the controlled atmosphere with the controlled processing, there is slow access. Otherwise, automatic processing, quick access. Under control of attention in controlled processing, and requires little attention towards automatic processing. Limited in capacity, while needs little capacity to perform in the automatic processing. So that is clear that automatic processing is better in every way for acquiring the second language learning. Robert D. Kessler said, second language acquisition is a skill learning. Learning originates with declarative knowledge, exercised as procedural knowledge. Processes become proceduralized, automized like other skills. Now, emphasis should be on the frequency. Knowledge of language takes its place through exposure, and the more often something is heard, it connects more strongly. That is the connectionism. The competition model says, explains the relation between first language and second language acquisition. Because the hypothesis says, I quote, language acquisition occurs without the necessity of a learner's focused attention or the need for any innate brain module that is specifically for language, unquote. There is a variability of route. As a matter of fact, L2 learning route is a relatively rigid route, as L1 has an impact upon L2 learning. As the linguistic structure differs, as transforming their L1 system would lead to acquisition of correct system. To explain the variability in rate and outcome, SLA researchers investigate the role of external factors in the acquisition process. First investigation line throws light on the nature of the input and the role of interaction in the learning process. And second line envisions upon the role of variables like intelligence, aptitude, or attitude. There is an evidence that language acquisition is a developmental process. Van Patten and Williams, in a discussion of second language acquisition theories, proposed 10 observations that researchers have widely reported. It is very important before understanding any theory, before going on for any further research on second language acquisition, to understand these 10 points proposed by Van Patten and Williams. These include the target language is important. Focus on the meaning of utterances makes learners quick. Learners produce more output as language than they take as input, because they also have something with them as the part of the L1, so they include something in that, they add something. A learner's speech output is in a predictable order. Learners can develop at variable rates while learning under the same conditions. Learners' competency can vary in multiple areas of language, like strong speaking skills but weak writing skills. We say communication. Communication is a process where both speaking and writing skills should be there. But if a person who can communicate, who can talk, but when it comes to writing, he feels at loss because there is no good hold over the grammar portion. Someone who is there who can write well, but when it comes to speaking, he is just scared because presentation skills are not there. So both the things should be taken care of. Sometimes learners may not learn the frequently used language. A learner's first language plays very powerful role in learning process and may have a major impact on the acquisition of the second language. Here we can see that if both the languages, the first language and the second language, they are from the same group, then it becomes easier for the learner to understand and to acquire the second language easily. But if they belong to the different groups altogether, then the process is difficult. Instructional effects are limited on the learning capacity of the student. A particular aspect of language which is taught and practiced may not match the student's intellect. Although language production is important, the acquisition of second language is a restricted field. Observations propose that researchers move to the second basic task of SLA research, which is to explain how to acquire language. The answer lies in the fact that researchers have examined the relation between internal cognitive processes and the external socio-cultural factors. Just to conclude, we can say that the research is able to bring out these findings: relation between interaction and acquisition, awareness, autonomy, authenticity, and context of interactions are carefully designed. Individual learner language through a socially constructed process should be taken care of. So, theories about second language learning help us a lot in understanding the process and carrying on this research further to make this acquisition process easier for students. Thanks for visiting EPG Pathshala.